George Lucas saw something coming that almost nobody wanted to hear.
All those Star Wars films.
All the Star Wars films.
They were your kid.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
Okay, but
From the moment he sat across from Charlie Rose in 2015, he told us exactly what would happen to the thing he built, how the people who took it over would play it safe, chase the money, and run out of imagination. He warned us. And 10 years later, watching where Star Wars ended up, it's hard not to feel like the man who created this cinematic masterpiece called every bit of it. Today, we're going back through the entire story, from a tiny movie nobody believed in to a $4 billion empire, and why one quiet interview now feels like a prophecy. Part 1. The Beginning. But to understand why that warning hit so hard, we have to answer a few questions first. How did a film that studios were sure would flop become the biggest thing in movie history? Why did the man who made it walk away from it completely? And why did Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, spend years saying the same thing Lucas did, just from the inside? To get there, we had to go all the way back to the beginning, when Star Wars was just a strange idea that nobody in Hollywood wanted to touch. Back in the mid-1970s, George Lucas was not the legend we know now. He was a young filmmaker coming off of one hit, a small coming-of-age movie called American Graffiti, about a group of teenagers cruising around their hometown on one last summer night before their lives changed forever. And that film matters more than it sounds, because the studio almost passed on it too. One of them wanted to bury it as a cheap TV movie, and instead it became a surprise smash. It was the money and the trust from that little movie that gave Lucas the freedom to even attempt Star Wars. So the same young filmmaker who just proven he could turn an idea nobody believed in into a hit had a weird new idea he couldn't shake. He wanted to make a space movie, but not a serious science fiction film. The way he describes it, people think Star Wars is a space opera, but it's actually a soap opera. A story all about family, about fathers and sons.
it started here and it went there. And it's all about generations, and it's about, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers, and it's a family soap opera. Ultimately. We call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera. And it's all about family problems and it's not about spaceships.
So picture trying to sell that in a room full of studio executives. A fairy tale set in the stars, built for kids, made out of the old adventure serials he loved growing up. And really, underneath it all, a family drama dressed up in spaceships. And Hollywood thought he was crazy. A sci-fi film had never made big money, and a movie with the word war in the title was seen as box office poison. So the two together looked like a guaranteed flop.
I thought it was going to make any money because, as I say, in the end, we finished it, we showed it to the board of directors of Fox, they hated it. And I had an ally at the head of the studio, and he fought for me and got through there, but nobody thought it was going to be a hit.
When Lucas finally showed an early cut of the executives at Fox, the board of directors didn't get it, and some of his own filmmaker friends sat there confused, not sure what they'd just watched. And here's where it gets almost unbelievable looking back. Lucas didn't just quietly doubt his movie, he was convinced it would flop. He came back from visiting Steven Spielberg's film set a nervous wreck, calling Star Wars a little kid's movie that didn't match the vision in his head. And he was so sure Spielberg's film would be the bigger hit that the two made a friendly bet, trading a small slice of each other's profits. Lucas lost that bet, and it ended up costing him tens of millions of dollars. Which is the best proof there is for how little faith he had. That same lack of faith is why he made the deal that seemed almost foolish at the time. Instead of taking a big paycheck to write and direct, he took just $150,000, and in exchange, he asked to keep the sequel rights and the merchandising rights. Fox happily said yes, because back then movie toys and t-shirts were considered worthless. That single decision would go on to make Lucas around $6 billion and turn him into the richest filmmaker alive. Because what Lucas built wasn't just good, it connected to something deep. He took the oldest stories humans tell, the myths about fathers and sons, good and evil, a young hero answering the call, and he wrapped them in spaceships and laser swords. He wasn't making just a fun ride, he was making a modern myth, and people felt it without even knowing why. Part 2. The Explosion. Then, May 25th, 1977 happened. Star Wars opened in barely over 30 theaters because almost no one wanted to show it. Fox had to force theater owners to take it, telling them that if they wanted another movie the studio was pushing, they had to book this little space film too. And it exploded. People lined up around the block. Some theaters ran it 24 hours straight just to keep up with the crowds.
The people in this crowd will soon be among almost 40,000 who have seen a new science fiction movie at North Park Cinema 2. The movie is called Star Wars. In only 9 days, Star Wars has grossed more money than any movie in Dallas history.
Within a week, it was shattering box office records, and by the end of its run, the first film alone had pulled in hundreds of millions of dollars, an unthinkable number at the time. The kid who thought he was making his last fun little movie before going back to art films had instead changed cinema forever. And here's the thing about that success. Even Lucas couldn't believe it. He has said many times that he has a low opinion of his own work, that he could always see the flaws, the parts held together with tape and rubber bands.
You know, I have a pretty low opinion of my movies. So to me, I've always said, well, these didn't really turn out the way I'd hoped they would. And, you know, and I can see all the flaws and I can see all the stuff. They're actually terrible because I can see all the scotch tape and the rubber bands and everything holding it together.
He had a vision that was always bigger than what the technology of the time could actually pull off. And to him, the finished film never quite matched the picture in his head. But the world didn't see the flaws. The world saw magic. The mythology was so powerful that Lucas kept going, telling the rest of the story across the original trilogy, and then years later, going back to fill in the backstory with the prequels. But somewhere in all of that, something important happened to George Lucas. He stopped wanting to be the king of the blockbuster. Part 3. Walking Away. This is the part most people don't really understand about Lucas. He never actually loved popular movies the way you'd think.
I fell into popular movies by accident. I always disliked Hollywood theatrical movies. I didn't want anything to do with them.
He came up wanting to make small, experimental personal films, almost like visual poems, the kind of thing only he might ever want to watch. Star Wars was supposed to be a detour, not his whole life. So after the original trilogy, he made a choice that surprised everyone. He stepped back from directing for years to raise his kids. He said that being a dad hit him like a bolt of lightning, and that taking care of his daughter just felt like the right thing to do. The most powerful filmmaker in the world basically chose family over the throne. And underneath all of it was a frustration that kept growing. Lucas felt trapped by the very system his movie helped create. A system where studios were so scared of losing money that they only wanted to make safe bets and sequels. He started wanting to make those personal films again, the strange ones that wouldn't make a dime, and he knew the big company he'd built couldn't really survive him doing that. So he made the biggest decision of his career. He decided to sell. On October 30th, 2012, Disney bought Lucasfilm, and with it, all of Star Wars, for $4.05 billion. Lucas handed his life's work to a new owner and told him he was at peace with it. But he wasn't. Part 4. The Warning. This interview is the heart of everything, because Lucas didn't just talk about selling Star Wars. He warned us about what would happen to it, and to movies in general. And this is the part where I want to step back and just let him talk, because he says it better than anyone could say it for him.
These are my kids. So
All those Star Wars films.
all the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are right. You know, I loved them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
And
sell
you
them
sold
off,
them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and
Okay, but having said all that, and having talked to you for the last, and known you for a while, and admired you, I mean, it must hurt you.
well, no,
It's your family. It's
but
the last story. It's your story.
But in
it's
the end,
you.
But I knew there's 3 more stories, and I knew that was going to probably take, you know, to do it right would take about 10 years. And I said, I'm 70. I don't know whether I'll be here when I'm 80. You know, every 10 years the odds get less. And so I said, and I'm not ready to do that because I want to do these other things. So I have to make the decision on my own that it's time for me to move on.
Sit with what he just said there. This is the man whose entire career proved the opposite of everything he's warning about. Star Wars came from nowhere. American Graffiti came from nowhere. There was nothing like them before they existed. His whole point was that the magic comes from taking the chance, and he watched the industry decide to stop taking chances, using his own movie as the excuse. And then it got personal. He called those Star Wars films his kids, because that's what they were to him. He created them, he raised them, he poured himself into them for 40 years. And then, talking about handing them to Disney, he said something he would quickly regret. He compared selling them to handing his children to white slavers. Now, that's a clumsy and tasteless way to put it, and Lucas himself knew it. He apologized within days, called it a very inappropriate way to say what he meant, and made it very clear he respects Disney and Bob Iger. So we're not gonna defend the phrasing, but you can understand the feeling underneath it. This was a man watching the thing he built and loved get taken in a direction he didn't choose by people he felt didn't really want his input. That's not the language of a businessman who wanted a check. That's the language of a father who can't let go. And he was just as honest about why he and Disney split.
You know, they wanted to do a retro movie. I don't like that. Every movie I worked very hard to make them different. I make them completely different with, different planets, with different spaceships, with different, to make it.
He said he had story outlines ready, whole ideas for where it should go. But Disney wanted to make something for the fans, something that felt familiar. Lucas always pushed to make every film new, different planets, different ships, new ground. They wanted to look backward, he wanted to look forward. So he walked. And he's compared the whole thing with a comparison anyone who's been through a hard breakup will recognize. And again, this is one to just let him say himself.
A simple rule of life, which is when you break up with somebody, the first rule is no phone calls. The second rule, you don't go over to their house and drive by to see what they're doing. Yes. The third one is you don't show up at their coffee shop or the things what you're going to bring in. You just say, no, gone, history, I'm moving forward. Because every time you do, and we all learn this from experience, every time you do something like that, you're opening the wound again. And it just makes it harder for you. You have to put it behind you, and it's a very, very, very hard thing to do.
Part 5. Enter Mark Hamill. Now, what if I told you George wasn't the only one who was sounding the alarm? Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, was feeling the exact same thing. Just from inside the new movies, Hamill has a history with Star Wars that goes all the way back to that first Impossible film. He's told the story of reading that original script and having no idea what it was.
And I'll never forget reading that script for the first time. And based on the audition, I thought, well, Harrison's the leading man. I seem like the annoying sidekick, the teenage sidekick.
He went to Harrison Ford asking if it was a parody, and Ford basically told him to stop thinking and just say the lines. Hamill realized this wasn't normal science fiction at all. It was a fairy tale with a princess and a wizard and a space pirate. He trusted Lucas, played it sincere, and helped create one of the most beloved heroes in film history. So nobody on Earth understood Luke Skywalker better than Mark Hamill. Which is exactly why, when the new Disney films came out, his honesty cut so deep. When Hamill came back for the sequel trilogy, he was given a version of Luke he didn't recognize. In The Last Jedi, Luke wasn't the hopeful hero anymore. He was a broken, bitter hermit who had given up on everything and exiled himself on a remote island. And Hamill, the man who built this character, told the director straight up that he disagreed.
It's an optimistic, hopeful character, and
Yes.
I had a real, sort of a back and forth with Ryan. I said, Ryan, a Jedi doesn't give up.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
A Jedi, if he does something wrong, he makes it right. Even if he's traumatized and goes away, he regroup within, 6 months. But since it's no longer my story and there's a new protagonist, I had to try and fill in that for myself. It's not important to the story, but it is for the actor to try and figure out, who is this guy? How did the most optimistic, hopeful character in the galaxy turn into this hermit who says it's time for the Jedi to end? I read that and I said, what? That's not what a Jedi does.
He said it to Rian Johnson's face. He argued that Luke wouldn't quit. His whole point was that a Jedi, the most hopeful man in the galaxy, would harden his resolve in the face of loss, not run away and hide and wait to die. Now, to be fair to everyone, Hamill later softened this. He said the phrasing was clumsy. He praised Rian Johnson as one of the most gifted directors he's worked with, and he committed fully to the performance, even calling it some of his best work. This wasn't Hamill trashing the movie. It was something more important. It was the man who loved this character, feeling deep in his gut that the soul of Luke was being changed into something it was never meant to be. The same protective instinct Lucas had for the whole franchise, Hamill had for one person inside it. And Hamill, just like Lucas, put his finger on the real problem underneath it all: the money. He said it with dripping sarcasm, pointing out that because The Force Awakens made a fortune, that supposedly meant it was good. as if box office and quality were the same thing. That was the whole disease Lucas had warned about, said out loud by Luke Skywalker himself. Chase the money, play it safe, and call it success. He even warned the fans directly.
Let's all repeat the mantra, it's only a movie. And if you think you're going to go into the movie and recapture your childhood, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
He knew the thing people loved couldn't just be repeated, that you can't bottle lightning twice, and that expecting the new films to feel like being a kid again was a setup for heartbreak. Part 6. The Payoff. So step back and look at the full picture. A young filmmaker nobody believed in made a strange space movie and accidentally turned it into a $4 billion empire. And when it was time to step away from what he believed was his purpose in life, he gave the keys to Disney. Instead of listening to the creator trying to double down on what was already working, they decided to make safe, stagnant, uninspired movies that didn't live up to the originals, didn't capture the same essence, and ultimately ended up disappointing the fans. And then the actor behind one of the most important characters in the entire franchise tried to steer them in the right direction, saying the very same thing from the inside. But both of them were basically waved off as bitter old-timers who just couldn't let go. But regardless, it was the truth. When Lucas talked about Star Wars using the tools, the color, the sound, the digital effects, he kept making one point over and over. You're supposed to use the tools to tell a story. You're not supposed to use the story as an excuse to show off the tools. The moment you forget that, the moment it becomes about the money and the spectacle, you lose the very thing that made it special to begin with. That was the warning. George Lucas and Mark Hamill were trying to tell all of us. Yeah, primarily Disney, but maybe it's us too. And whether you think they were right or wrong about every single movie that followed, you have to admit, the men who knew Star Wars better than anyone tried to tell us something, and almost nobody wanted to listen. But maybe it's time we finally did. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch this one next.